What's up everyone, Alastiir here, and to commemorate the top 100 delve depth push that we did this league with Frigideath, I'd like to bring you a build guide for our 2-player build. This is a variant on the GC Miner and the Mana Guardian. It's built entirely to be synergistic, where both of these builds help push each other to the utmost limit, whilst sacrificing the capacity to play solo. The pros of these builds is, combined together, you get very high damage, very high survivability, and you can attain all this with a pretty low budget. However, the cons are that these builds are very mistake punishing when it comes to placement and knowing where you and your ally are. And most importantly, it cannot be played when the other player is offline, so you have to make sure that whoever you're playing this with is going to be there when you are going to be there. Now, with a mix of just essentially self-found and some general stuff that we've purchased at the start of the league, we easily breached depths 500 plus. The gear that you're going to be seeing in this video is a consequence of us pushing further and buying a lot of gear with all the money we've made over the course of the whole month and a half of the league start. However, it is not necessary to be able to get to our depth level. These builds, combined with mostly found gear, have killed Atziri, have killed Shaper, Uber Elder, all 3 delve bosses, including depth 500 plus Owl with some pretty ripping mods. So, without any further ado, let's get into the passive tree. So for the GC passive tree, nothing particularly fancy. Mostly just going to want to focus on getting ES, since you are going to be running Pain Attunement and going low life with the Shavs. The nodes, if you want to level with mines that you have to rush, are Volatile Mines to get instant mine detonation, and Clever's Construction to make sure your mines are invulnerable right after you place them and that you can detonate them safely. Detonating mines instantly is a core part of this build because we do not run a detonate mine setup. You are always going to detonate them manually. So make sure to get those nodes ASAP. They are the biggest quality of life and the best nodes you can get for this build. Everything else is pretty generic. You're going to want some crit, you're going to want some crit multi, you're going to want all the mine nodes, and you're going to want energy shield to make sure you don't die, along with a couple jewel slots that we'll cover later in the items. For the Mana Guardian, you are going to essentially want to rush all of the Aura Effectiveness and Aura Reduced Reserved nodes so that you can try and run auras as fast as possible. You're also going to want to quickly get a mixture of Mana and ES to make sure you yourself can keep on living while buffing your own ES pool and your teammates' ES pool along the way. After that, pretty much, as soon as you get the 5 link, you're going to want to get Whispers of Doom for the additional curse so that you can run both Temp Chains and Enfeeble. We'll cover that in the gem soon. So for gear, let's first cover the mandatory uniques needed for both builds to function. For GC Miner, it's quite simple. You need either a Solaris Lorica, or, if you can afford it, a Shavron's Wrappings, and a Sorrow of the Divine. Sorrow of the Divine is simply so you can get Zealot's Oath without spending all the passive points needed to get there, as it's quite far from our tree, and we're pretty starved for points. Shavs is of course ideal to avoid the chaos damage bypassing ES, but if you need a really budget option, Solaris Lorica does function, as thanks to the Mana Guardian, you are still going to have a respectable ES pool, even without your chest. For the Mana Guardian, there are 4 core unique items. You will need Prism Guardian to run your auras in, Alpha's Howl, which, quite importantly, has to be enchanted from the Merciless Lab enchant that has 14% reduced mana reservation of any one of the purities or discipline. This is so you can reserve just the right amount of mana to give a maximum amount of ES to your party. Then you're going to need a Solaris Lorica as a body piece, which of course you swap with the Shavron's Wrappings when you can afford it. And finally, the Vigil Crimson Jewel, which is very important to be able to guarantee that your whole party, that is, your friend, gets Fortify when you do. For other uniques for the build, the Guardian is the one that's going to be running the most. You are essentially want 3 Grand Spectrums for the mana, 3 Healthy Mines, and the Conqueror's Efficiency Jewel that you're all obtaining while you're leveling. You're then going to absolutely need an Atziri's Foible Amulet to get a large amount of mana, which translates into Energy Shield. And finally, Ephemeral Edge is a solid choice for a weapon that just gives you a lot of Energy Shield on its own. For the GC Miner, extra uniques that you can use count Ciri's Promise, Taste of Hate, and Presence of Chayula. Again, none of these items are inherently necessary for the builds to function. However, getting as much mana as you can on your Guardian is probably the most important, and then you're going to want to get these next items when you can to improve both the damage and survivability of your party. The rest of your gear should be focusing on rares. You're going to want a rare crit spell dagger. Crit strike chance for spells is the most important. Extra spell or extra fizz as added is always a nice bonus. For the helmet, you're going to want to get a place additional mine, preferably with a respectable amount of ES on it. The offhand is, of course, a stat stick scepter. The boots are just generic boots with decent ES and whatever amount of mana or res that you want. You can also get MS if you want to. These are just budget options. The gloves, essentially, you're going to want to make sure you have ES, you're going to want to make sure you have some dex because you do need stats very heavily in this build, and Chaos Res is always nice to have. Rings are a mixture of resistances and energy shield and stats to make sure you can get everything equipped. The belt is once again a lot of strength, a lot of ES, and some Chaos Res as extra. The jewel inside it is just more ES and whatever extra stats you wish. For the Guardian's rares, you're essentially going to want to make sure that you get 2 +3 unset rings. These are very important for your auras. Then everything else essentially is just nice to have. A crystal belt for more defense, sword boots with just a lot of ES and a bit of stat fixing, and the same thing with the gloves. Chaos Res, once again, is always nice to have because you're going to be capping elemental resistances quite easily, so it's just an extra layer of defense that you can afford to have without having to spend a lot of money. These builds use a lot of utility skills, so we're just going to focus first on the main gem setups, and then we'll explain what utility and why we picked it up. So let's take a look at gems. The GC Miner's main skill setup is Glacial Cascade, Increased Critical Strikes, Minefield, Trap and Mine Damage, Remote Mine, and Conk Effect. This is what you'll be using all the time in delving in on bosses, and you can swap the Conk Effect in for Ink AoE while clearing. We then use a 3-link Blood Magic, Herald of Ash, Herald of Purity, along with Herald of Ice, not linked. We also use Cast when damage taken, along with Increased Duration and Immortal Call, and once again Wrath, not linked. And finally the last 4-link is Increased Duration, Lightning Trap, Frost Bomb, and Clarity. In our 3 links we have Summon Ice Golem with Bear Trap and Abyssal Cry, and in the other one we have our movement skill that is Flame Dash, Faster Casting, and Arcane Surge. The reasoning behind these choices was simple. The Guardian gives us endurance charges, so of course having an Immortal Call is always useful. We leveled it as much as we can with the strength that we have in the build. For offense, Frost Bomb and Vaal Lightning Trap are both very, very useful because they're both more damage multipliers, which help on single target bosses that are usually the only things that survive any bit of time anyway. And finally, Vaal Clarity guarantees that we can keep on casting in situations where we will have to move without dependent on the Mana Flask. Summon Ice Golem is to focus on the crit strike chance, as most of this league you need to shatter if you don't want to die to on-death effects, so this is simply for consistency, though Flame Golem is perfectly acceptable. Bear Trap is once again just for more damage. And finally, Abyssal Cry is for zones where shattering is not always possible, such as avoidance of elemental elements. So in that case you use Abyssal Cry to make sure that you still corpse explode when necessary. For the Guardian, your main links are going to be Ball Lightning, GMP, Curse on Hit, and Temp Chains. For your 5th link, you're going to want to add in Feeble as that +1 curse, and if you ever get the 6th, it's a nice quality to have an Enhance. In your Alpha's Howl, you're going to want to put all 3 Purities, as well as Vaal Discipline. In your Prism Guardian, Vaal Grace, Vaal Haste, and Determination. And in your +3 rings, Vitality and Clarity. Finally, in your gloves, you're going to want to put in Hatred, Blood Magic, Generosity, and Enlighten. As utility skills for the Mana Guardian, we chose to run Vigilant Strike, Shield Charge, linked to faster attacks in the main hand, to make sure that we have those long fortifies for everyone, no matter what. And in the boots, Smite for the extra damage, Rallying Cry for that and the mana, and Summon Holy Relic for the life regen, all linked to increased duration. Finally, for jewels, for the GC Miner, you're going to be wanting to run 2 Long Winters to convert the last 40% of your GC physical damage to cold damage until you can afford a Watcher's Eye. In our case, thanks to being able to running Wrath, we got a 38% phys damage converted to lightning damage while affected by Wrath for a mere 15 chaos, when a 38+% of hatred cost multiple exalts. Once you get that jewel and you can get rid of the 2 Long Winters, you're going to be able to run any 2 extra jewels that you like. Crit multi, of course, is always nice. I chose to run a Pure Talent to gain base crit strike chance, again, to consistently get those freezes and those shatters, and a bit of mana regen, which is also nice for sustaining the mind dropping. Finally, you're going to want to get an energy from within to make sure that you're converting the Melding Wheel into pure ES. Overall, these builds have been really fun to play, and they felt really powerful even just as we got along. Most of the gear you see that we have now is gear that we got after we reached our objective of top 100 Delve. And we could honestly keep on pushing deeper, but due to time constraints and wanting to make other crazy builds, we're going to leave it at that for now, until later. In any case, these builds are fun, they can be really cheap to get started, and if you want to, they can be very expensive to push into huge amounts of power. I personally love making these 2-player builds, so I hope you will find a friend, or a stranger, that will turn into a friend as you play together and destroy content with this awesome 2-man comp. As always, I'm Alastiir, and thanks for watching.